Titanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, first, second. Okay, so we're going to start. This is chapter 18, text 23. Everyone can, I don't know. Anyway, we'll see how it goes. I'll start chanting. Niyatam saga rahitam.
Which one is us?
Niyatam sangarahitam.
Araga dreshata kritam.
Raga deshata kritam.
Apala prepsuna karma.
Afala prepshuna karma.
Yat tat satvikam uchate.
Yattat satikam uchyate.
Niyatam sangha rahitam.
Niyatam Shangarahitam
Araga dreshata kritam.
Raga dveshata kritam.
Kritam
Apala prepsuna karma.
Afala prepshuna karma.
Yat tat satvikam uchate.
Yattat satikam
Uchate
uchyate.
Niyatam sangha rahitam.
Niyatam
Yattat sangarahitam.
Araga dreshata kritam.
Raga dveshata kritam.
Apala prepsuna karma.
Afala prepshuna karma.
Yat tat satvikam uchate.
Satikam Uchate
Uchate.
Niyatam sangarahitam
Niyatam
Yatam
Shangarahitam
sargarahitam.
araga dveshitah kritam
Pradeshata kritam.
afala prepsuna karma
Afala
Afala prepshuna karma.
yattat satvikam uchyate.
Yata
Tattat
Satikam
satikam
Uchate
uchyate. Niyatam sangarahitam.
Niyatam Shangarahitam
Raga deshata kritam.
Araga
Aragadeshata Kritam
Afala prepshuna karma.
afala
Apala Prepshuna Karma
Jattat satikam uchyate.
yattat
Yata Satikam Uchate
Niyatam sangarahitam
Niyatam
Niyatam
Sangarahitam
sangarahitam.
araga dveshatah kritam
Raga deshata kritam.
afala prepsuna karma
Afala prepshuna karma.
yattat satvikam uchyate.
Yattat satikam uchyate.
Niyatam Shangarahitam
niyatam
Niyatam sangarahitam.
Aragadeshata Kritam
araga
Raga deshata kritam.
Afala Prepshuna Karma
afala
Afala prepshuna karma.
Yata Satikam Uchate
yattat
Yattat
satvikam
satikam
uchyate.
uchyate.
नियतं सङ्गारहितं
Niyatam sangarahitam.
आरागाद्वेषिता कृतं
Deshata kritam.
आफलाप्रेप्सुनः कर्म
Afala prepshuna karma.
यत्तत् सात्विकमुच्यते
Yata Satikam
Satikam
Uchate
uchyate.
Niyatam,
Niyatam
Niyatam.
regulated.
Regulated
regulated
Sangha rahitam,
Shangarahitam
Rahitam.
without attachment.
Without
Without
attachment
attachment.
Araga dreshata,
Raga
Dveshata.
without love or hatred.
Without love or
with love or hatred.
Ritam,
Kritam.
Chant,
dan,
Done.
Done.
run,
apala, prep,
Afala.
Afala Prepsuna.
sure.
apala, prepshuna.
Afala
Afala
Prepshana.
Prepshuna.
By one without desire for fruitive result.
By
By
one
one
without
without
desire for
desire
fruitive
of
result.
result.
Karma,
Karma.
Karma.
Karma,
action.
action,
Yat,
Yat.
Yat.
yat,
which.
Which.
which,
Tat,
Tat.
Tat.
tat,
that.
That.
that,
Satvikam,
Satikam.
Satikam.
satikam,
the mode of goodness.
In
The
the
mode of goodness.
of goodness,
Uchate,
Uchate.
is called.
is
Is
called
called.
Translation. That action which is regulated and which is performed without attachment, without love or hatred, and without desire for fruitive results is said to be in the mode of goodness. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Regulated occupational duties are prescribed in the scriptures in terms of the different orders and divisions of society, performed without attachment or proprietary rights, and therefore without any love or hatred, and performed in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of the Supreme, without self-satisfaction or self-gratification, are called actions in the mode of goodness. Namaha Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pachani Nivase Sasunyavadi Prasachati Satarane Niyatam Sangha Rahitam Araga Dreshata Kritam Apala Prepshuna Karma Yat Tat Satvikam Uchate. That action which is regulated and which is performed without attachment, without love or hatred, and without desire for fruitive results, is said to be in the mode of goodness. So we're going to go over today action in the different modes of nature. So when Prabhupada first came to this country, 1965, and he walked around Boston. He landed in Boston at Commonwealth Pier. And the temple is now on Commonwealth Avenue. And when he went with the captain of the ship because he had free passage aboard the Jaladuta. And he walked around Boston and he came back and he saw by people's actions, they were in the mode of passion and ignorance. And you really have to be in the mode of goodness, at least come to the platform of goodness to understand transcendental literature. So even in the purport, Prabhupada mentions without any love or hatred and performed in Krishna consciousness. So in Krishna consciousness, that's another mode. There's goodness, passion, and ignorance. And Krishna consciousness is called pure goodness or Shuddha Sattva, where it's a transcendental plane. So this mode of goodness is actually one of the material modes of nature. It is not transcendental, the mode of goodness. But when Prabhupada explains this goodness, it seems, especially when it's within Krishna consciousness, that's no longer the mode of goodness. That's the spiritual mode of pure goodness. So what's the difference between pure goodness and goodness? They're pretty much the same, except when one is in the mode of goodness, he's also sometimes influenced by passion or ignorance. But when one is on the Shuddha Sattva platform of pure goodness, he's no longer influenced by passion or ignorance. He's only influence. I mean, it might say influence, but he's only in the mode of goodness. He's on the transcendental platform. So when there's some disturbance, he still stays in the mode of goodness. He's not attached. He doesn't hate his service. He doesn't love his service. He's doing his service out of duty. We can actually, in the transcendental platform, we can serve and we can actually enjoy our service. Because we're actually serving Krishna, we're pleasing Krishna. And when Krishna is pleased, automatically all his parts and parcels are pleased. So we can actually, by engaging in the transcendental service of the Lord, we can also experience pleasure. We can actually enjoy it. We may not be looking for that enjoyment. We're looking to give enjoyment to Krishna, but when Krishna enjoys, we enjoy simultaneously. Daruka, Krishna's chariot driver, one time was fanning Krishna, and you could imagine, or maybe you can't imagine, but you can try to imagine fanning Krishna. I mean, we fan the murti of Krishna and we get some pleasure out of it. Imagine if Krishna is right here and we're fanning Krishna. Nothing can be better to do. You're just in the moment and you're in ecstasy. So he was like that, fanning Krishna, but his ecstasy started to interfere with his fanning. He's fanning and he's just in ecstasy and he's not really paying attention to his fanning and he's not fanning Krishna so well. So he controlled his ecstasy so that he can please Krishna more. So the duty of the devotee or the one person in the mode of goodness, in the mode of goodness, a Brahmin is in the mode of goodness. A devotee should ultimately go beyond the Brahmin to the Vaishnava platform, which is above a Brahmin platform. And we should just be caring about what Krishna wants. So we're not interested in our self-satisfaction, pleasing our own senses, not interested in looking for profit, adoration, or distinction. We're just doing our service to please Krishna or to please the spiritual master, because the spiritual master is the transparent via media of Krishna. So if we please the spiritual master, that's also pleasing Krishna, the bona fide spiritual master. One time in New Vrindavan, I think it was in 74, could have been 73, Prabhupada came and I was there with devotees, and it was Vyas Puja. And this was right after Janmashtami. We just had Janmashtami there, and the next day was Vyas Puja. And there was a lot of people, not just devotees present. There was, newspapers or news people. And so he explained a little bit about Vyas Puja. And the one thing that I remember very clearly, he was saying how Krishna sends his bona fide representative. And he said, just like a rich man, God is more than a rich man, but a rich man, what can you do to please a rich man? He's got everything. You can't give him anything. You can't buy him any help. He already has help. He doesn't need anything. What can you do to please him? Prabhupada says, just like a rich man, if you pat his son nicely on the head, he is pleased. Or he said, if he has a dog and you pet his dog nicely, he is pleased. So Srila Prabhupada then said, so I am like Krishna's dog. I mean, we can't think of Prabhupada in that way, but he can think of himself like that. And he's showing also his humility and if we just please him, if we do something nice for him, Krishna is pleased. So it's an easy way to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is beyond any way what can we do to please him? but that's what we can do. When he sends his representative and we do something nice for his representative, then he is pleased. So this would be in the mode of, or transcendental to, more in the mode of pure goodness or in Krishna consciousness. So we want to try to please Krishna. We want to try to do our duty, not being attached to success or failure. Even that same day when Prabhupada went for that walk, he came back on the Jaladuta and he wrote a poem while he was in port there in Boston Harbor. And he wrote that, I'm your puppet. If you want, you can make me a success or a failure as you like. He said, I'm your puppet. Make me dance, oh Lord, make me dance. So he's just a servant of Krishna. We shouldn't even want to serve Krishna only if we're successful. We should just try and spread Krishna consciousness or do whatever menial service to support the preaching of Krishna consciousness. And the results are up to Krishna. They're not up to us. We have to just try. And if we try, usually you do get some good results if you try sincerely. So we shouldn't be attached to success or failure. We shouldn't do it out of, I love doing this or I hate doing this, but I'm doing it. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I'm doing this because this is pleasing to Krishna. Pradyumna, one of Krishna's sons, actually his first son, he said that if Krishna likes something that I don't like, I accept it as nectar. And if Krishna doesn't like something I like, I accept it as poison. So his likes and dislikes become what Krishna's likes and dislikes are. Even once a devotee told Srila Prabhupada that I want to distribute, so many books because this is your desire. And Prabhupada said, no, he said, it's Bhakti Vinod Thakur's desire. And it's Bhakti Siddhanta's desire. Or maybe even started with Lord Chaitanya. It's Lord Chaitanya's desire. It's Bhakti Vinod's desire. It's Bhakti Siddhanta's desire. Then it's my desire. So he's desiring it because that's what they desire. And especially Bhakti Siddhanta, he's the one who said how distributing books is the best preaching. He said that there's, if you have a mridanga playing, you can hear it for a few blocks, but the books can be heard all around the world. So he even said, because the devotees, they built beautiful temples and the devotees were getting attached to their little rooms. They want this room, they want that room. And Bhakti Siddhanta said, sell all the marble in the temple and print books. So this is a good way of preaching. And anyone who's doing service, whether they're directly distributing books or they're supporting the distribution of books, that's preaching. And we should do it not because we like it or because we're not going to do it if we hate it, but even if we don't like it, that's not a consideration. It's Krishna likes it. That's all that matters. The gopis, well, if you get the dust from your feet on Krishna's head, that's a great offense, and it says that you go to hell if you do something like that. But Krishna had a headache and he needed the dust from the devotees' feet to put on his head. And devotees didn't want to put their dust from their feet on Krishna's head. But when he approached the gopis, when someone approached the gopis on his behalf to put their dust on his head so that he can get rid of his headache, they immediately did it. And then when asked, but you're going to go to hell for doing this. So what if we go to hell? Krishna has a headache. They didn't care at all, one bit, about their own personal well-being in any way. They just care about pleasing Krishna. So that's the way we have to become situated in pure goodness. which is all for satisfying Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if Krishna is pleased, then all his parts and parcels are pleased. I was talking about that. We had this in class. I was given the Bhagavatam class yesterday, I think it was. And Sahadev was speaking about how Krishna should be the first worshipped in the Rajasuya sacrifice. And everyone, it says everyone, but there were a few who didn't. Everyone was so pleased with what Sahadev said. No, it said all the great saintly persons there thought what he said was perfect. And one of the things he said is, if you please Krishna, Prabhupada says, actually, Prabhupada says in other places, not there. This was Hridayananda Swami's purport. But if Krishna is pleased, then all his parts and parcels are pleased. So we're discussing that. How is all his parts and parcels pleased? Like, in other words, like not thinking of ourselves, I please Krishna, I didn't. But we know Srila Prabhupada, without a doubt, pleased Krishna. So does that mean everybody is pleased when he pleased Krishna? And he's pleasing Krishna all the time. So how come it didn't seem like everybody's pleased? So in our discussion, we came to different things. One of the things was that not so much that they're pleased as much as every living entity makes some spiritual progress. So if we make some spiritual progress, that's pleasing. But because we're so contaminated, so covered over, we may not realize that pleasure. And then I was thinking today, how if Krishna is pleased, we're pleased because we are part of Krishna. We're just like a little cell, a little fragmental part and parcel of Krishna. So when Krishna is pleased, every part of him is pleased. So we are pleased, but we may, because we're so dull-headed with this material consciousness, we may not even notice how we're pleased. And of course, Krishna is pleased at every moment. So we should also be pleased. But that's because we're relating to this body and we're not doing things in the proper, pure, transcendental goodness. So we're not experiencing this pleasure at every moment. But we can be if we surrender. Krishna says, as you surrender unto me, I reward you accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects. So if we surrender to Krishna, we get rewarded. According to how much we surrender, that's how much we get rewarded. And it's perfect. It's not like there's the communists that everybody works for the government and everybody gets their share, but it's not fair because some people work real hard, some people do hardly anything and they get the same thing. Or the ministers get even more. So it's not fair. But with Krishna, it's perfectly fair. As you surrender, you get rewarded. And it's perfectly fair because it's not run by any human being. It's this whole system of karma, of action and reaction is there since time immemorial. So they have it down pretty well, how you behave and you get some reaction. Even in the Bible, it says, as you sow, so shall you reap. I mean, that's karma, but they don't use that word karma because I don't know why, but they don't. But it is just karma. As you sow, so shall you reap. So as you surrender, you get rewarded accordingly. And we should learn in this chapter, this particular part of this chapter, about the modes of nature, because we don't want to be in a mode of passion, and we don't want to be in the mode, especially don't want to be in the mode of ignorance. We want to be in the mode of goodness. Now, even if we can't be in the mode of goodness all the time, we should make an effort, especially when we see, it's just like it says, when I can't think of the verse, but basically it's when you realize that you're off track. When you realize you're chanting japa and you're not hearing the holy name, when you realize you're looking at the deities and thinking of something else, at that moment, you bring your mind back to hearing the holy name, to looking at the form of the deities. So we are going to deviate because we're conditioned for so long and our desire for Krishna isn't that strong. But when we realize we've deviated, we immediately bring it back to Krishna, bring it back to Krishna conscious activities, bring our minds back to thinking of Krishna. So that's all we can do. And by doing that, the more we do that, the more it will be easier, the more we will be remembering Krishna, and the more it will be easier that we can do that again and again. So we have to make the effort. As you sow, so shall you reap. As you surrender, I reward you accordingly. So that surrender is making that effort. It's not effortless, just go along and float around. No, you have to consciously make the effort to hear the holy name. First, you have to constantly make the effort to chant your rounds. You have to make that effort. Then the next thing is you have to chant better. And every one of us can chant better. So this is what we have to do. And then we're showing Krishna, we really want to chant nice rounds. So this is some of the ways we can be more in the mode of goodness. So regulated occupational duties as prescribed in the scriptures in terms of the different orders and divisions of society, perform without attachment, even before perform. They're talking about Varnashram. There's Brahmins, there's Kshatriyas, there's Vaishyas, there's Shudras, there's Brahmins, there's sannyasis, there's Vanaprasthas, there's Grihastas, and there's Brahmacharis. So now this society, this was spoken 5,000 years ago when this society was actually existing, and it was pretty much almost by birth, because that's the way it generally worked. But just by being born in a Brahmin family doesn't necessarily make you a Brahmin, or being born in a Shudra family doesn't necessarily make you a Shudra. That's according to your work, don't tell me. Chaturvanyam maya shrestha guna karma vibhagasaha. Guna and your qualities and karma, your work, according to your qualities and work, that determines whether you're a Brahmin, whether you're a Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. It's not according to birth. Janma is birth, and Janma is not in that verse. So, but in general, 5,000 years ago, Brahmins will produce Brahmins most of the time, and Shudras most of the time produce Shudras. But there are instances even at that time where Kshatriyas will become Brahmins. Rare, but it does happen. And Karna, who was a Kshatriya, he was born of the sun god and Kunti, but she had to give him up, and the Shudra family found him, so they thought he was a Shudra, but he had all the qualities of a Kshatriya, but he was still considered a Shudra then, 5,000 years ago. So this caste system that people try to follow today, there is some evidence of it, the way people used to think 5,000 years ago. Because generally that's the way it was. But we know now that Kalo Shudra Sambhava, everyone is born a Shudra. So from there, you can work your way up a little bit, and hopefully to the mode of goodness and become a Brahmin. And then when you act on that platform, and then you can follow these duties. But most people today are not in these particular, everyone is a Shudra pretty much. So what do you do is with a bunch of Shudras? But at least for those devotees who are trying to surrender to Krishna, we can see what mode of nature we are mostly in. It doesn't mean you can be, we see the Kshatriyas, they're in the mode of passion, but yet they're the greatest devotees. Some of them are the greatest devotees. Arjuna and Krishna are best friends, and he's a Kshatriya. So you can be Krishna conscious in any of the different ashrams and the varnas and ashrams. So how do we work with this today? For devotees, which the only devotees are really going to be caring about this anyway, Bhagavad Gita, you might read it as a scholar who you don't really believe it, you're just reading that this is some literature. But for people who want to apply it to their lives, we have to apply it where we have to be situated more in the mode of goodness. We do our service, whatever our particular occupational service is, we do that, but we do it in the right consciousness. We do it in Krishna consciousness. It says, without attachment or proprietary rights. So it's not even mine. What I get from this job is not mine. It's Krishna's. I have to use it for Krishna. That's how we should be thinking. And therefore, without any love or hatred, I do it because it's my duty. And I'm trying to please Krishna. And performed in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of the Supreme without self-satisfaction. I'm not doing this job so I can get some self-satisfaction or self-gratification. That's called action in the mode of goodness. So I think we practically have to see, we should try. Most of us aren't in the mode of goodness according to this verse. But we should try. The results from our work should be used for Krishna. Now, it doesn't mean every penny you make should just go to the temple. You have to live, but you have to live in a Krishna conscious way. So you buy a house, rent an apartment, whatever you're living, you have to pay for it. Now that you have to do that with the money you earn, but that house or apartment should be used in Krishna's service. You should have an altar. You should offer all your food. Krishna should be the center of all your activities. You should, morning and evening, you should chant. You should read scriptures. You should and discuss these scriptures. And in this way, your house and everything about it is Krishnaized. It becomes Krishna, becomes the center. And then you can also give anything extra you have, you give to the temple to support the temple program, so we can all get together and have festivals. So there's different things, but you have to see, like Bhakti Vinod, it's not my house, this is Krishna's house. These children are not my children, they're Krishna's children. Krishna's given me this wife and children to take care of as a service. So I have to try to raise them in Krishna consciousness. So this is how we can try to be more in the mode of goodness in our actions. So before we read any more verses, anyone have any questions or comments?
So, Pyari, you were saying something about Sahadeva saying that Krishna should be honored and not everyone was pleased. What was the analogy you were trying to give? What were you trying to compare that to?
Sahadeva said, when Krishna is pleased, everyone is pleased.
Mm-hmm.
So how is it, I'm not saying we please Krishna. I'm just I know for a fact Srila Prabhupada pleased Krishna. He pleased Krishna all the time, but it didn't seem like everyone was pleased. He said every living entity is pleased, not even just the human beings.
I see.
So how are we pleased? We're pleased by, when Krishna is pleased, everyone is pleased because of we make some spiritual progress. So that's pleasing. But also because we're part and parcel of Krishna. So if he's pleased, the part's also pleased.
Yes, that makes sense.
But our being pleased in this body, we're so covered over, we don't even notice it. So in other words, we made some spiritual progress and we don't even notice it because there's so much in illusion, so much in the bodily concept of life.
That's for sure.
Most
I
of us
don't
know.
notice. I
Most
don't
of us
notice a
know.
lot of things.
I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Any
Hare
other
Krishna
questions?
Prabhu.
Who's that?
I accept my humble obeisance, Sargosha Prabhupada. This is Srinivas. Thank you, Prabhu, for such a wonderful class and reminder.
Oh, come on, it's not over yet.
What, Prabhu?
It's not over yet.
Not over. I know. So far, whatever you have told, specifically about.
You're kicking me out already.
Keeping the mind attentive. I was thinking, you said how the mind is flickering, and then controlling the mind is also in the mode of goodness. That's very profound, because the passionate and ignorant mind wanders. Thanks for that reminder. I was thinking about one more example of what you're saying about being pleased, besides the verse you quoted, "Ye yata mam prapadyante tam sateva bhajamyaham." A person's, how much he's pleased is dependent on how much he's surrendered. I was also thinking the story of Dhruva Maharaj, when his stepmother was not happy with him, but once he became a pure devotee, and when he came back, then everybody was satisfied with him. So I was thinking, could we look at it as this way also? When we become pure devotee, that means when we please Krishna, others are also pleased with us. In other words, we won't have as many enemies as we have otherwise had when we were not pure devotees. For example, even, you were saying how Prabhupada was definitely pleasing Krishna, and how the world sees Prabhupada is different than how the world sees, say, ordinary devotees. Even I heard so many instances where devotees' parents, they would not be happy to see their kids in ISKCON temples, but once they meet Srila Prabhupada, at least Badnan Maharaj told me the story that how his mother said, "Okay, you can stay with this man. He's a good guy." So she was pleased with Prabhupada. So could we also look at it that way, Prabhu?
Well, for certain, if you become a pure devotee, there'll be a lot of people would be very attracted to you, because you're only caring about them. You're not caring about yourself. But there are people who don't like pure devotees. There are demons. So it's not like the demons are just attracted to pure devotees, but they're adverse to pure devotees. So sometimes when you surrender to Krishna, people may not like you. So we certainly can't think, well, I'll surrender to Krishna so people like me. It doesn't matter whether they like me or they don't like me. It's what Krishna likes. Even Prabhupada said, we're not interested in pleasing the masses. We're interested in pleasing the acharyas. So if you please the masses, then they like you. We're not interested in that. We're interested in pleasing the acharyas. What do they want us to do? So we do that, and that's all we care about. And we don't care whether people like us or don't like us. That doesn't matter at all. It shouldn't be in the equation. I don't care if they like me or they don't like me, as long as Krishna likes me. That's all I care. Even anyway, that's the way I look at it. But I don't think it is a fact that Prabhupada, with a lot of people, they became attracted to him. And as far as the young Americans who became attracted to him, it was because they have never had anybody in their life care about them as much as Srila Prabhupada cared about them, genuinely cared about them. And they weren't fooled. They weren't fools. They can tell this person really, really cares about me. So therefore, I want to try to please him. So people who are a little bit sensitive can see that. But even there's other people who were challenging, very challenging to Prabhupada. When he'd give a lecture at a university, he'd get somebody saying all kinds of things. Prabhupada would say something and they'd start saying, like Prabhupada would say, something one time, and in your next life you could become a dog. And then one person says, so what's wrong with a dog? And Prabhupada said, well, you have my blessings. Then they're going to see what's wrong with a dog. But not that everyone was just attracted to Prabhupada. He wasn't like that. But a sincere soul, any sincere soul would be attracted. Just like in the Rajasuya sacrifice, when Sahadev spoke up like this, all the saintly persons were so pleased and they totally said, everything you said is correct. It's so the saintly person, but Duryodhana was there. He didn't want to see Yudhisthira and them doing this big sacrifice and with the demigods from all over the world, and he didn't want to see this a success. And the main one who really didn't like this was Shishupal. And Shishupal, Krishna gave Shishupal's mother, Shishupal's mother didn't want Krishna to kill her son. So he said, I will tolerate 100 offenses. And if he commits more than 100 offenses, then I'm going to have to kill him. But if he commits less than 100, well, I'm going to tolerate 100 offenses. So in the Rajasuya sacrifice, I read, I think it was, it's either Vishwanath Chakravarti or Sridhar Swami, who said that that Shishupal could have immediately tried to stop this, this worship of Krishna being the first to be worshipped. And he said, but he didn't, because he wanted this Rajasuya sacrifice to fail, because he wanted the whole thing to fail, because these are Pandavas are, friends of Krishna, and he hated Krishna. So he wanted to fail. So he waited until after they worshiped Krishna. And then he spoke, thinking now they made this big mistake, because if he would have spoke up sooner, then they may have just worshiped someone else. And then the sacrifice would have gone on nicely. So he waited till after they wrongly worshiped Krishna, according to him. And therefore he started to speak, and he was so offensive, speaking against Krishna. Many of the Kshatriyas took out their swords, were going to kill him. A lot of people just walked away holding their ears. They didn't want to hear this anymore. And Krishna tolerated. And then finally, after 100 offenses, he took out a Sudarshan chakra and he cut off his head. And there was another thing, that Krishna didn't want the devotees there, Kshatriya devotees, to kill him, because then that would have ruined the whole affair of the sacrificial, the Rajasuya sacrifice. Because if he would have done it, if he would have gone and had a big fight, there'd be blood all over. So Krishna used his Sudarshan chakra, cut off his head. And I was thinking, well, why didn't he just suffocate him if he didn't want any blood? But he cut off his head with his Sudarshan chakra, and not a drop of blood. I imagine the Sudarshan chakra heated up, so when it cut to his head, it just melted the skin, but not a drop of blood went on the sacrifice. So he had the neck sealed, and the neck on both sides of the neck, on the head part and the body part, sealed up so that no blood came out. So it's easy to just throw the head in a trash can and the body in another trash can. I don't think they did that, but the point is that Krishna had this plan. So then the Rajasuya sacrifice was a complete success, and Duryodhana tolerated it. He didn't like it as a success, but there was nothing he can do. And he was very happy when Shishupal was saying these things about Krishna. A few people were happy, and it doesn't say Duryodhana, but it does say after Shishupal got his head cut off, those people who were like on Shishupal's side, they all left this Rajasuya sacrifice because they didn't want that thing to happen to them. Anyway, it's a nice pastime for Krishna.
Yes, thank you, Prabhu.
I don't even remember if you had a question. Oh yeah, you did have a question about whether everybody's going to be happy with us when we become pure devotees. I'm sure more people will be happy with us. And the genuine devotees will be happy with us. And that's who we should really care about, pleasing the devotees. Krishna's pleased when you please the devotees. Any other questions? Or comments?
Well, you said we should not care about what anybody says except devotees, but it still bothers us sometimes. How do we deal with that?
Well, that's interesting because we're just talking about that too. You know, we have to tolerate without being disturbed. So I was talking to Jiva, say, how do you tolerate while you're being disturbed?
That's my question too.
But no, you can tolerate with being disturbed. Somebody's saying some things about you and you tolerate it, but you might still be disturbed. But you have to tolerate without being disturbed. That's what Krishna says. And that's only the second chapter. So we have to learn how to tolerate. And of course, we know Bhakti Siddhanta says, even when something becomes intolerable, still you should tolerate. So, and you have to do it without being disturbed. So how do you do it? You got to be Krishna conscious. There's no material solution. There's no mechanical way of doing it. I'll count to 10, whatever. Things may help something, but they're not going to really help you to tolerate. You just have to think of Krishna. You have to be Krishna conscious. You have to see Krishna's doing this to me. And he's doing it to me for a reason. I don't know what that reason is, but it doesn't matter. I want to just tolerate it.
So if you're disturbed and tolerating it, the premise goes you're not Krishna conscious, huh?
No, you're making an effort. At least you're tolerating it, but you're disturbed. He said to tolerate it without being disturbed. So you're not making it, you know.
Your work in progress.
Yeah. You know, normally I would punch the guy, but I'm not punching him. So,
Yeah, right.
but I'm still not happy about it. I'm still
Exactly.
really agitated. And if he does it a little longer, I'm going to have to punch him.
That's
Wait
definitely me.
until he says something about Krishna, something bad
What?
about Krishna. Then we can wait until he says something bad about Krishna and then punch him and make it.
Yeah, well, we'd be punching everybody.
Srinivasacharya Prabhu, sometimes you have to even tolerate that.
Yeah, Prabhupada said we know.
Otherwise, I'd be punching people all day.
Yeah, he said that, you know, that in this age, we don't kill the demons, we kill their demoniac mentality. So certain people, you just have to walk away. And certain people you do punch. If somebody starts fighting, Prabhupada said, if someone hits a devotee, you should become like fire. You shouldn't tolerate that. Not so much hits yourself, but if it hits somebody else, some devotee, and you're there, you should become like fire. You know, then you finally got that opportunity to punch, get it out of your system. So there's time that we have to, you know, there's even violence. There's times to use violence. You know, we're non-violent, but sometimes we have to use violence. We're not completely non-violent. The Christians, they have this saying, if, you know, someone hits you smacks you in the cheek, you should turn the other cheek. You know, they hit you and you should let them hit you in the other cheek. Now, Jesus was teaching this to people who really didn't know when to use violence and when not to use violence. So better, if you don't know, don't use violence. But if you know, then you use it when it's necessary. You know, anything could be used in Christian service, even violence, if when it's absolutely necessary. But not becoming violent because you can't tolerate it, because you have to protect the devotees, or you have to protect the deities. You have to do the needful. Prabhupada says, do the needful. So you have to No. So devotees are more intelligent, that they can understand sometimes violence is necessary and sometimes you have to use it. Generally, you can go your whole life without ever using it, but there might be a time when you have to. So everyone should go and get a black belt so they're prepared. That was a joke. Okay, well, I was going to read more verses. There's not much more time. Anybody have any other comments or questions? So I will read another verse. There's no purport.
I was thinking, Prabhu, you said there are many pure devotee Kshatriyas. I was thinking at least 50% of the Kshatriyas, of the Mahajanas are Kshatriyas. I don't know where we put Lord Brahma, but if we exclude Brahma, still we have 6 Mahajanas who are Kshatriyas.
Oh, nice. Okay, I'm going to read the next verse. But action performed with great effort by one seeking to gratify his desires and enacted from a sense of false ego is called action in the mode of passion. So this false ego basically is identifying with your body. So you want to gratify you have desires, gratify your desires, which is to please the body. Not just that, but perform with great effort. You know, these materialists, Prabhupada gave an example like a skyscraper building. It's such an effort to make a skyscraper building. And why are they doing it? You know, it's just so they can get money and get sense gratification. It's just a big effort. You know, it's different if you're building a big temple for Krishna, and then you're doing it all for Krishna. So you're making a big endeavor, but it's for Krishna. There's a big difference, you know, who you're doing it for. So that even the same activities can be done. One can be in the mode of pure goodness and one can be in the mode of passion. Actions performed with great effort. Generally, if something is too difficult to do, maybe better not do it. You know, we want to be Krishna conscious. Sometimes something's a big, you know, you get some project and it's just too big and there's no way you can do it. You know, it's just too much. So maybe you should give it up, sell the project and do something else. But we all, I think most of us know what the mode of passion is. It's longings and hankerings and happiness in the mode of passion is in the beginning, it's like nectar, and then later turns into poison. You know, so a passion is like immediate gratification. I want to enjoy, not immediate. I'm willing to work really hard for it, but then I want to enjoy sense gratification. So any comments on passion? There is no purport.
So happiness in the mode of goodness then is poison in the beginning and nectar in the end, or?
Yes, it is. Yeah, so it may not be so much fun at first. Then you kind of get used to it and it becomes fun. Yeah. Anybody ever have happiness in the mode of goodness?
I'm having right now.
I was going to say a little bit, but still waiting.
So I don't know. Did you get to the fun part yet?
Yes, I'm having a lot of fun getting up early in the morning.
Yeah, even that. At first, it's like poison. It's not easy to do. But after you actually do it for a while, it's nice. And it happens automatically.
I want to do it, except I don't want to fall asleep in my meetings and be distracted.
Well, that's the mode of ignorance. But it's hard. when it's a mundane meeting.
That's true. Feel like, why am I here?
Okay. Well, I don't know if I should read the next one. It's got a short purport, but anyone else have anything? Comment, question? Omio, how come you didn't say anything?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandapat. It was a very nice class. Thank you.
Nice. Usually you have questions or comments.
I was too much absorbed in your class today, Prabhu. Every day I was.
Okay, okay. Okay, I don't think I'll read the next, only 3 minutes left. So we'll just end here. Offer our obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu bhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you very much for tolerating me, and probably see you next Tuesday.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Pyari, I wanted to say the outside of the temple looks nice.
Oh, when did you go by?
I work in Glastonbury, so I drive